Chapter 3. The devil starts with incantations, moves to blasphemies. The sun came and went, and touched night and lifted again, and now the day is coming up, bright with no relish of the thirst, no change of the position and purpose. Though the devil knows he should not build a temple upon this sand as it shifts, he believes that his body is his temple, that its feet step above the churnings, and that here he has found a place where the sands have gone still, that there are places even that the driest sufferings grow calm and wait for the flow of replenishment. The moon has circled and blown off like the dust that it is, craterous husks banished to puzzle space together in abutted territory. The stars are not wandering, but we are, and their presence is true and available in the day, through the blue sky for blue lakes, blue waters of healing for blue airs of depth, beyond that full, blossoming, pollinated, gasping atmosphere, though not visible. They array to the back of our sun to bring life and war, the same, to the surface, rage and torrent, net and web and elastic fun. Harmony, hate and luster, chromatic, choraled, bringing freedom, tumult, and roaring terror all together, a speed we only get when we turn our backs to the night. The marking of the past, our moon at the eyes of the devil, in battle with the greed and ingratitude of the Father, the deity, has dissipated. All that is now is the present, and then the mirroring future, predicted, prophesied, fulfilled. On the temple, atop the leaf, the goddess with the purple irises, leaning from her concrete bench, speaking to the sleek floor of the finished courtyard, is telling the others her belief that their destiny and their destination is the same as his. The floods are tiding thicker now, harder and more ruthless to the selfless self, the waves of children mating their inclinations of sprout and specimen, crawling over each other to bathe down into the nutrient of this desert blood. The devil grows weary and exhausted, like grime and puff from pipes, blown fuses and pistons, chugging and gurgling, inhaling, smoking black used oil. He can no longer see his bike anywhere, and thus can't remember how he got here, or question how he could ever leave. The babies overwhelmed its lump in the dust and dirt, and devoured it, died in droves, puking up swallows of slimy, orange rust, and slivers of bent, chewed, slicing metal, engorged in their stomachs, or, as some, impaled themselves on the busted wires and bolts, pressed down on the straight stings of mechanical shape by the dogpiling of their brethren, muffling the screams of soft skin, punctured, and then frying on sky-heated barren steel, flat seared to the bottomless injustice, crushing the brave, sicking instincts and feces, and fires melting the relic to the bodies, a flesh cycle for that which would ever pick it up by the handles and reign again, and it does some of the work for him. He delights in brief comfort, that in killing themselves they do some small, unregenerable amount of the desolation for him. He resigns himself to the strength and finesse of Zen, of relaxation and precision against exertion, of electrical impulse and abating instinct, a baking endurance before a wallowing singe that seeks to end the self before any whim of suffering. He harnesses the spring and rebound of his sword and lets it lift itself, or lift with the full rise of his crooking, up-curling spine, and soon releases his swings to the pendulum and to the wind, letting the swoop pull close and shear to the grains of ground a brush of the tip, lopping apart the necks as clean as before, swinging up over his own pillar, and slices in line as he walks around their aimlessness, but without the dulling thump to his bladed edge that buries the tool in the sand. Soon he has lost count, though he was not counting from the start. Instead, instilled, he decapitates the many with ease, with less thought, as they are with less initiative, following unconscious in mass, grayer in drive, unambitious, and with less remorse for his own drudgeries and trudgings, less regard for his own sense of a loss of time and vigor and leisure and production. He knows he can sever them all, or believes he may try, at the mercy of God's mission, but the bodies begin to pile and trip, collect and obstruct at his feet. They curl in together and form into notches and uneven nodes for the meat pile. The devil knows that he burns in the day and dies every night, but that means he is reborn every morning and finds warmth in this still, so often so cold of a place. The followers grow angry and embittered with the leaders if the leaders are not leading them anywhere, where searching and looking or remaining still rather than leading at all, solitary and angrier that they are not led into more followers to follow and follow further. The leaders grow angry with the followers for kicking at their heels, for grunting when they never pause and observe and ask where they themselves are going and recognize the reality of order. The leaders grow angry with the followers because they never trust in the development and recognition and lead greater ranks than any that continues when the wisps of whim and the rushes of misdirection wipe the sound and sense of any one body from the support of their backs. Angry that they know, to find theirs in their own, to discover, to implore, that they are and have known that they are alone. The leaders grow angry, then, with the followers, because they push them as fast and furious into more leaders with their already established chase, with the veiled trailing of the many more ahead, as many more behind, and, upon resisting, are shoved off to the side. We make it to infinity, like a prismatic needle showing glinting, spectromatic polish, sheens of light on clean, gray silver, like a church steeple attuning out to a point in real space, like the split of orbing night auras between the stars of Father Time and the glow of Mother Earth, the musty rainbows of undecided valleys between the mountains, awake and dreaming or asleep and polluted, towering out of nowhere to nothing, no sun, no stars, no lamps, no moon. We launch our escape shuttles or build our buildings, irreligious in antenna, out to reach a sustaining planet like our own, thinner and smaller for every tier, and we bred ourselves down that way to fit the limitations of lightened height. We find others, like us, building from the same rotating place of some distant world, calculated to carry us as it is, reaching out so far, forgetting that those who inhabit the core of that steeple swoop in from much wider planes of existence, much taller leaps of earth, much lower levels of favored life, like birds for the ovular inhabitation of spirits, and just as we reach the emptiness of our pleasures, filled on substance, ear-released, there's a point where we chitter down to no one, a blackness of mind and body, facing in and ahead and above and on to a mirror image, returning of our own dark tower, our own sinful steeple, our own exodus to miniature obscurity, rolling backwards for the living dead, and in that point, at the very extent of our self-preserving accomplishments, with our undeniable structure complete, unconquerable, no touch for the sharpness, there is nothing. A scrape and fuzzing impulse where those two monuments almost collide, almost touch as their highest floors are almost empty, compressed to peace and vigilance, reaching to fail at conquering the sepsis of gravity and the vacuum of greatest exile, and yet we still pass through. By then, in eternity of home, the eternal have labored their way into dormantance, into their individual works and the harshness of their climates, down into the silence of nothing but the act, and, when we land, tearing each other apart for the gore and the sex and the reputation, we land with less flesh than electricity on a primordial world, with nothing but the knowledge, the all-knowledge, and the fact of its possibilities, its mapping of coordinates, something we relate, in our monolith, as enlivening to forms of animals by its shape, a rectangle of the square, lengthened, cuban pillar, archway and split, the corners that stand on a crumbling, curling, tumbling ground as the fizz and buzz and hum that sizzles and emanates from it, teaching the creatures to think, to commune, to coincide and create where we've long consumed. They learn and draw in the refinements and nectars of a sparse habitat, and fill each with spirit into a template of body, from both, not more from one or the other. It was us that gave ourselves the powers of righteousness and civilization and understanding, nobility, justice, and yet also us that remained here, building this earth to graze from the rays and luminescence of the sun, conformed, spruced, and threshed, homogeneous against the quakes for the reaping, celibacy for the soul, and grain harvest under evading control, down to the pure pain without benefit. The final failure of those that are not of mechanics, but are as unconscious as the machines they command themselves to lighten the burden, until their hands are stripped of their authority to do anything, to move anything, to take from anything, and from any of all life the entrance of beneath the molecules of rocks, our castles, the juices of grass, our beds. In the temple, atop the leaf, the Lord with the orange-hazel eyes, sitting on the stone floor of the walkway, tells his kind, his people, that there is a reason the devil stands and burns for all eternity at the gates of heaven, like a red lizard impervious with scales against the sun, feeding from its lights, solar, idle, perched and parasitic on the shoulder of some poor, dark soul yet to be lost, whispering that heaven is all around into the brightness, that God is near and available, even without the help of guiding angels, even more present away from them and into the hissing sands, anti-elemental, catatonic, a sinking for the panel that it's true. He gets there but on his own, traveling unaided across the hidden defense for God's promise. He gets so far for so close that his energies are exhausted, just as he gets to the entrance of the nourishments, the ascensions into yet higher heavens, and is left with a choice to remain where the light, like the blackness, encompasses as it absorbs all color, to rise from the dust of the swallowing vortex, engulfing and stay forsaken, or to travel back into the fires of earth. He learns the universe for that shining eternity, locked out of heaven by his own device, the weights of his own chains as links of body parts and prophesied protections. But the devil also knows that letting himself die is as akin to suicide as the purposeful act itself, and is more like to succeed than the weakness of devising, of derision, of abating treason, of mere mutilation, and thus he learns that all deaths, under all imprecisions beside peril, all hesitations of reflex, and all destructive forces unabated, are as suicides, as mortal transgressions, and that all death then lead us, send us to hell. He knows too, though, that he hides in the greatest light, and the lords and goddesses understand that many lives may lead us to evil, and then to heaven, where we are to suffer our inconsistencies, our consequences of preparation and resolution quelled. We reach the glory of heaven, and suffer the sins and transgressions of our own inconvictions, and the grace arising into the powerful, laden, permanent home and land and presence of God. We find real thunder. We find real fire. We find real rain. And we find real snow that covers us and buries us in sheets of frost. We find elevation, airless, and then plateaus, merciless. The devil hears the rings of a carnival in the distance, where no one is laughing, just screaming at the horrors of the grotesque, the terror of the unannounced Lord. Too bright out to hide the tricks and abrasions and incontinuities of the roving masks, and the torque of the chaotic attractions, the smoke of their engines, the height of their saws and buckled seat chairs. But this, he decides, is just a ringing in his ears, a sign of good faith to come, or good faith came and already passed, laying both the same, the seed and sense for good fortune. We find fruit, and we find treasure, and the sugar is weightier than the jewels or the metals or the silvers or the gold. We chew the green and draw a distance, awareness, view beyond the belief and glide of wings, the call of roots and ages cast up in a flock to think it, itself, and each its own, in time, in cresting, shoot across the creases of those clouds. We walk on the heavens after the gust of our broods, our kinds fleshless rejoined, and we walk on water when we burn, where none of it fits to take on the drop and descent back into the minimal hells, and we are as Savior when we've fallen from them, our caretakers, our underlings alike, and we find new silences. Atop the temple, glittering on the leaf, they remember in the pool of awareness that the roofs and tops and ceilings were torn out from their hives, that they were exposed beneath the radiation to the color they'd been emanating from inside, and that all survived, inhaling fresh, wandering clouds, gasping as such, huffing shortness through the shakes, the stings of boiling light more than chills, feverish, sour, awrought, invigorated, irrapacious, even though now they are just a glimmer. The devil knows now they are just a glimmer. In his returns to the center, to his balance, he has to climb up over the nodes of crumpled bodies, stubby and thick with skin, licking each other as they died, murdered into gestations and loppings of paradise, combobulated, spun into coagulations, compilings, mountains and valleys, terraces and crusts for the holes, stepping stones, but slipping, unearthing around and down the descent, whipping thin slashes of collapsed, uprooted, spasming ventricle squirts of the weighty heads on the fall, tumbling and bouncing down the slants and grades of squishing, rigid craniums, colliding, popping, clacking, springing away from the crooked, locked, branched, abandoned, linking collections of appendages, gripping, stacking, pulsing, getting him back to the top. The short obstacles stretch into long riverbeds, shouldering hillsides, and in time, when he gets to the deepest pooling, the widest wreckage in all reaches, all far surroundings, he finds that the waves are coming to a slow, soothing halt, a murmuring restriction and mute of the lost life among the loss of lives, bare and buried and unstirring, until the motions of those dead and needless around them rest and hide and pretend. When he stands, exhausted from the travels that often pawed him down to all fours, slicked him with the struggle to then arch and arise, he reaches the slope and droop to the opening of the core, the wasteland of the desert, the sands bathed and thick and clogged and settling in with its spilled blood, sinking, if he wishes, always a way and an energy to stomp and climb his way up and out, clay for the goop, quicksand for the hungry, without vestigial stomachs, a swallow of the sick and sour fluid before the crisp sensation of the bath. All the way up to the balls, he cups the hand in the red glass and water, the sifted, filtered muck, collaborated, clean, and writhing, and he slaps the plate and cavity of bone cage beneath taut skin with a palm, a drag of the finger to mark the imprint on his chest. The breeds have taken a generation, a shadow of darkness and fear where he waits. It is night, but the sun is up at full noon again, burning, twisting.